If we take a look at applications like Skype or Instant Messenger, we see that we're immediately aware of the presence of anyone else on the network that is online at this point in time. So the device is always part of the internet. And the moment you want to make a telephone call or establish a communication with another person, you simply up the data that you send to that person. So it's just simply increase in the data that you send to that person. We know that the person is on the network because it prompts every now and again to tell us that the presence is available. And if we want to make the connection, it's simply a matter of pressing a button on the application, and we can then establish either a text communication or a voice communication or a video communication with the individual. Another key difference between the controlled and open network is that the controlled network group believes that the intelligence should be built into the core of the network, whereas the open network elements believe that the intelligence should be on the edge of the network. Let's quickly take a look at a traditional telephone company. If they want to implement video telephony, what will they have to do? They will have to create a tremendous amount of intelligence in the network and then change all of the end user devices to allow you to do this. In the nethead space, it's slightly different. You download a new application or a new version of Skype that allows video telephony, and it's done. You don't have to worry about the intelligence in the middle of the network anymore. You don't have to change anything in the network, because the network is only expected to shift packets. And this is the key difference, where the telephone companies believe in putting more intelligence in the network. The open network says no. The best network we will have in the future is purely a dumb network that purely switches packets, where all of the intelligence sits on the periphery. And that's a key difference between the two business models of these two camps. Some other changes is that in the controlled environment, the protocols are proprietary and not end-to-end, and the open network philosophy means that protocols should be end-to-end and open. So if we take a look at any new technology, and if they talk about end-to-end IP connectivity, we really mean that this technology is purely in the bellhead space, meaning that the interface can be connected to any other IP environment, which means that seamless connectivity is possible. There's no key constraints in taking one protocol and translating it to a next. It's purely an end-to-end IP environment, which means that you can actually utilize the network by having IP devices on the ends of the network, and you don't have to have any other intelligence for these devices to communicate with each other. Again, a key difference between these two philosophies. Moving on, we'll see that some other key changes is that state is kept away from the end user's device, whereas state is very much a part of the open networks environment, and you can also define your own services. What do we mean with state? If I take a look at my traditional telephone, I do not know before I call anyone else if that person is available to take my call. What we are seeing in the open network environment is that state elements are really already available. The moment if I want to talk to anyone on Skype or Instant Messenger, I will know if that person is available because their name will have a green little icon next to it, which purely states that this person is ready to accept my telephone call. So another key difference, presence management is therefore far easier on a network where you're always connected, instead of looking at a network where you have only a little bit of intelligence in the middle with dumb devices around, not providing you with any presence management at the current point in time. And if it does, it actually is quite expensive for the network to actually facilitate this specific functionality. Some other changes. We see that the controlled network believes in quality of service assurances, where the open network says, well, we can't really provide you with quality of services because IP packets compete with each other. But as bandwidth goes up on a year-to-year basis, then quality of service becomes a non-issue because you will get the same service at a far lower cost in 2 or 3 years' time. It's all about the capability of the bandwidth that you utilize that will define the quality of service that you will get, all depending on the amount of IP packets that you send through the network. Let's quickly look at the final slide on the IP telephony side, and that's really about the different philosophies. The IP focus on the controlled network side is that next generation networks are the answer for the future, according to the controlled network group. They really believe that the next generation networks will still be a voice data network. but that the master-slave relationship will still be in place with a center of control still within the network. The open network camp really believes that the future is all about next-generation internet services. They really believe that the IP protocol will be dominant, and any application that you roll out on top of the IP network is open to the user to define. So that's the key difference, that the control is still kept within the controlled network philosophy space. In the open network philosophy space, they say the internet, the IP protocol is pervasive. The applications you want to roll out on top of it is up to the user to define. So where does this bring us? Well, it brings us back to the clash of opinion between these two groups. And we've asked a couple of bellheads and netheads what they thought of the IP protocol per se, and let's see what most of them said. The key question is, what do you say of the fact that you cannot provide different charges for services making use of IP packets? And the bellheads say, well, we think it's poorly designed because you cannot charge for different value-added services. And the netheads, they answer, we don't think the IP packet is designed to be charged for. It's not a bug, it's really a feature. So a fundamental difference in how these two groups see the future. The most important thing is how this affects the digital value chain. The controlled network group fundamentally control the network by controlling the center of the network. That means the ID and billing, the core switch, the intelligent edge, as well as the local loop. And by controlling that section of the value chain, they really controlled the whole value chain. Whereas the open network philosophers actually focus on the edges of the network. The operating system, the browser, the application that runs on your device, or the applications and the portals running in the back end of the internet that you can connect to. So this is really the key difference. But there's also another fundamental change taking place. In the past, a telephone company gave you an identifier, a telephone number, so that you can connect to anyone else. In this new environment, the identifier is no longer kept by the network. I can choose my own telephone identity on Skype. I just choose a name, so the identifier is chosen and stored on my computer. The billing relationship is no longer part of the network. It simply means I can use a variety of internet connectivity providers, but the billing relationship for the services I get from Skype now resides on the other side of the portal. So on the next slide, you'll see the key difference and the shift in the two opinions. As you'll see at the top, the intelligence as well as the identification is moving towards the periphery of the network. On the value chain at the top, on the right-hand side, you'll see that the identification and intelligence now is part of the hardware and the operating system, that whole environment that sits very close to the user. So that means the intelligence and identification is sitting on my device, whereas the billing has moved out of the network and sits with the content provider at the edge of the network. That's on the left-hand side of the screen at the top end value chain. The traditional value chain you'll see at the bottom, and this is the fundamental difference between the different philosophies between these two groups and how they are preparing to attack the opportunities of the future. And this can also be seen if you take a look at the strategic positioning of these various companies. Moving on, let's take a look at the air interface and how the air interface can have a dramatic impact depending on which philosophy you utilize in order to make it successful.